And we're live. Welcome back to the LOOPcast. It's Tom, Erica, and Josh. The LOOPcast brought to you by The Loop, every American Catholic's favorite morning newsletter. Happy to be joining you guys this morning. We have a great show. Starting up top, we have a pretty big U-turn on the Epstein files. Again, may I add, from President Trump and this looming House vote coming up. And Josh, I want to hear a little bit about that kind of inside political baseball of whipping, getting the House to do what you want, getting the Senate to do what you want. So looking forward to hearing that. Secondly, we have the USCCB put out a statement on immigration. It was the first statement, I believe, since the 2000s from their collective group. And we got a quick response from Tom Homan, who's also Catholic. And we ourselves here actually wrote a report. I believe it's Immigration Enforcement and the Christian Conscience. Lots of good stuff to dig in there. We're going to go over all of that.
They released the video too, though, the bishops, not just a statement.
Yes, yeah. I got the video. Don't worry, we will be watching. And then finally, we have some interesting polling from Gallup on U.S. adults' religiosity. It somewhat contradicts a little bit of what maybe you've been feeling anecdotally as a Catholic going around. We have a lot of encouraging news about conversions, etc. So I had Erica go through that for us. And of course, we got good news. We got Twilight Zone. You know how we do it here. So we got a great show. I say we get into it. Josh, did you have anything you'd like to get into before?
Well, really quick, a coworker, Daniela, happy birthday. She's
she's the best.
Happy birthday, Daniela.
She's like a total ambassador for joy everywhere she goes. Greatest smile ever, and she works so hard to help everyone else here at the CatholicVote team. So Daniela, wishing you a happy birthday.
Well deserved. She's probably future saint. If I had to if I had to do betting odds, Daniela's up there for sure.
Well, we don't really like and support gambling here so much, but between Kelsey and Daniela, it would be
it's tough.
I did some digging into prop betting this weekend. Not good.
Prop betting? No, that'd be the easiest.
We were watching the NFL, and I'm like, what is prop betting? And so I was like scrolling while they're all watching.
Two things. It'd be the easiest way to solve like integrity issues in the sport because I guess the Cleveland Guardians pitcher got popped on it too, but you bet on individual performances, giving huge incentive to rig stuff. It'd be very easy to do so. If you miss a shot, you miss a pitch, etc. And then the second thing is that will never happen because gambling companies make the most money off of prop bets because you can stack them as parlays and they have like the lowest percentage of actually hitting. So it'll never happen. But that would be my quick solution. Like, hey, just get rid of prop bets. It'd be easy. It'd be fast. And also let's do something about the refs. That pass interference call was terrible. Okay, going on. Hey, look, Lions didn't deserve to win. All right, we're not going to get into that. Let's get into Epstein.
I distracted you. Sorry.
All right. Here we go.
All right, Epstein it is.
Yeah, we have a pretty big U-turn. And don't worry, I have the full history here. For those following, this has just become the Achilles heel, it feels like, of the Trump administration. Ran on promising to release. And let me just start up by what is the Epstein files at this point? Like, what does that actually physically mean? Obviously, Jeffrey Epstein, well-known sex trafficker, highly influential, very strange rise in terms of how he attained his money, his financier status. He was teaching at a boys' school in New York, math, and then all of a sudden he becomes in charge of all this rich people's money. Clearly ties to multiple intelligence agencies, Israel, the UK, the United States, etc. So what are these files that everyone's fighting over releasing, not releasing? It refers to a collection of documents, emails, investigative materials, and other records held by the Justice Department. This is relating to Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking network. So these include potential references to high-profile associates. There's been debate over whether a client list, quote unquote, exists, but there's well-documented evidence of Jeffrey Epstein using cameras to document all of his misgivings. So they would protect, say, what was going on with the victims for their privacy reasons, but the people who were taking advantage of them or who are using them, many that we know publicly were on these flight logs. Really surprises me and many other Americans why you would protect those people. Seems like a key promise. So we don't
know if the FBI files have the Epstein client list or not, but
it's true, but they're not telling
evidence
us.
Of clients.
Well, they told us that there was a list, and then Pam Bondi in July told us there is no list. And probably what it is that what they're referring to there, and it's so much semantics, right? And equivocation. But probably what Pam Bondi is like, well, there's no list as in here are 140 world leaders who were on my flights who trafficked with the girls. And it's just like a list somewhere. But that being said, there are certainly many names in these documents and emails, which you just referred to all of the different kinds of documents that are in these files that have the names of hundreds and hundreds. I mean, Epstein was a very well-connected man, probably there are, hundreds, maybe if not thousands of individuals' names scattered throughout these documents that if you had all of them and you had all the time in the world through triangulation, you could come up with a list. The problem is that mixed in with all of these people who were committing criminal acts, you're also going to have people who, he just brushed by, right? So do you demand that the DOJ just publish it all to the whole world, throw it out to the mob and let the mob decide? Or are you going to drag down people who are innocent while you do that? So that's part of it. Look, I'm not apologizing for the Epstein list, but
yeah, there's lots of very famous people who have gone to parties with Jeffrey Epstein who may or may not know what the guy did, or may not have gone to this island where said horrible activities occurred with minors. So we have people like Bill Gates, Donald Trump, and Bill Clinton. These are three very famous people who have all known Jeffrey Epstein and been to some of his parties or whatever. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's flight logs for each of these people.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's trying to get through the data and get through the information and see what happens.
Yeah, I think we're almost you could get lost all day in hashing out all the specific information. The basic problem is that Trump and Vance made a promise to the American people for transparency. And both Kash Patel and Dan Bongino made big names saying, we need to get what's on this list out to the public. We need to drain the swamp.
Correct.
I mean, if I go back to the timeline here, November 2024, they pledged they would release the Epstein files if elected, framing it as part of draining the swamp. Pam Bondi says on Fox News that she had a client list on her desk in February 21, 2025. She's backtracked those statements. And then to me, the worst part of this was they did this hilarious binder release where they handed out binders to conservative influencers that included nothing that wasn't already known publicly, basically embarrassing everyone there and embarrassing themselves in the process. That was on February 27th, 2025. But May 8th, 2025 is when we get this House task force on declassification. They send a letter to Bondi demanding full release, got no response. And the Department of Justice FBI joint statement said that no client list was found. So they're kind of fighting back and forth at this point. So of course, now we get, I think this was inevitable. Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna introduce a bipartisan effort to force the House to vote on full release. Now all of a sudden this becomes a political problem if it wasn't already. Speaker Mike Johnson questions Bondi. Trump claims briefing showed no mention of him and accuses foes of fabricating lies. This is a problem because the Wall Street Journal reveals 2003 Epstein birthday book with Trump signed card inside a nude woman's outline. Trump denies authorship, calls it fake, and sues the outlet. Again, we could fight over, hashing out whether a lot of people defend, a lot of people don't, whatever. The problem is that at this point, this problem could have been solved. He could have
I just want to give it add a little thing to what you said earlier about the discharge petition. Okay. So
sure. What
that means is that if you have any member of Congress in the House can start a discharge petition to do anything, to advance any legislation in the House, but it oftentimes goes nowhere. What has to happen is if you get a majority of the members of the House to sign off on the discharge petition, then it will eventually force a vote on whatever that topic is. And so with, only a 4-seat majority for Republicans, if you lose 4 Republicans, then you lose that vote. And so that's what, Massie was already right from the start, one Republican that wanted it to be forced. And of course, every Democrat's going to vote for it. So then it was just a question of over time, tick, 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 tick. What could happen if we get to the part where a majority of the members of the House then would actually favor that. So,
and that seemed what was happening over the weekend, because you get reports of Lauren Boebert being called into the White House to drop petition support. And then that leaked out. And now everyone's like, okay, they're panicking. They're calling in individuals into the Oval Office to be like, you better be against this. You better be against this. And it seems like, and he lashed out at Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene on social media, of course. But at this point, and this is why I shared that political article, you get the U-turn. Trump himself puts out on True Social, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide. I don't care. All I do care about is Republicans getting back on point on the economy. So basically reversing. So my read on this, Josh, and correct me if I'm wrong, he saw the jailbreak coming and wants to be on the forefront of saying, no, just go for it. I was always in favor of that. Instead, because he couldn't control the House. He lost control over how people are going to vote. Is that what you see?
Well, what happened is he had, it held on by like one vote. Okay. And then you had the House special election in Arizona where the woman won the congressional seat held by her father. And, that election got ratified, it confirmed. But then the House was in recess, for the last 3 or 4 weeks or whatever. And so Speaker Mike Johnson kind of held his, powder on this and didn't swear her in. He's like, wow, the House is in recess anyway. But as soon as she would be sworn in, then you would have the exact number of votes needed for this discharge petition to get final and thus forcing a vote. So Trump's only opportunity then, if he doesn't want this to get out, is to, like you say, convince somebody who had already signed off on it to change their mind. You're not going to get Massey and MT, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Trump have been at civil war for the last week. That's not going to happen. So if he can convince Lauren Boebert, hey, why don't you just change your mind and say, this is a distraction, then you would still be short and the discharge petition wouldn't happen. Well, probably what happened is after Lauren Boebert's like, nah, dude, I'm not going to change my mind. I can't. Then it's the die is cast. You have the 216, 17, whatever votes necessary. Then Trump's like, let's just flip the script. Let's just say, yeah, let's go for it. Vote for it. Let's get it all out there. Now, my question is, why would he say that? Why would he, quote, not care if it got out there now? Well, obviously, he can't stop it. But also, why did he campaign on releasing it? Well, maybe you're just going for anything you can to get a vote. But what would change his mind? What would have changed his mind from right before the election, promising, well, let's release it, we'll release it. Then to this spring being not wanting to release it, in the summer calling it a distraction, and then now like, okay, fine, whatever. Well, the last part makes sense. He can't stop it, so just say, fine, to heck with it. We're not going to be seen as obstructing. But the Democrats would say, oh, that's because he's guilty of sin. We got him dead of rights and all this material. Of course, anything's possible. I suspect what really is happening, though, is he just thinks this is going to lead to months and months of people picking apart this and talking about this or that. And there might be somebody who does get embarrassed, who is a big donor. And he's like, what's the point of all this blowing up in everyone's faces? I don't know. That's just my guess. That's my guess on his read on it. I don't know if that's right or not.
Yeah, if that's the read, it just seems like a complete unforced error. And yeah, I'm looking at the chat and people are like, I'm so over this. We need to get through this. We need to get over this. So I think the biggest problem being that if in fact in November of 2024, the Trump campaign, they get Dan Bongino on board, they get all this excitement over, we're going to drain the swamp, and then they pull in the Epstein file release into that. To a lot of people, this matters a lot, and that's just a fact. And if it was part of building the big tent to win the election, the problem is this seeming like fracture between Trump's campaign promises, many of which he has kept. I mean, the border being one of the most important to me. But this is another one on top of like the H-1B visas last week, on top of other walking back the IVF
my Epstein
stuff.
Files, H-1B
right?
visas,
Like Tom's personal.
Well, here's
Epstein
my question for you:
file.
like, who's it going to satisfy? I guess it'll, there's not going to be like the list of here's the like you say,
I don't think it exists.
People who went.
No, if I could, because people are, people are so annoyed and over this at this point. To me, this is a necessary exercising of demons. Let's all just admit at this point, yes, this is a mistake. He should have just been forthcoming about it. It would have embarrassed maybe donors, is what you're saying, Josh. But this does accomplish, in my mind, the ability to move forward now. Like people were never going to be able to move forward if this thing was held under wraps or slow rolled out. And like you even saw Democrats get a hold of emails through a whistleblower, and all of a sudden they're putting those out there. And then you have to relitigate again. Like, does this implicate Trump? Does it not?
My only question, Tom, I'm with you, but is it going to satisfy them? Because there's not going to be like a smoking gun list of
who's them. It satisfies me. Like the problem, okay, I think maybe the problem is that it's not about satisfying the other side. That's always going to be after Trump. This hurt real people, a part of his base. Like this was a betrayal in my mind, who was a part of his base, who voted for him, and it destroyed trust. And then of course, what did that lead to?
Yeah.
The overseas stuff, that was a problem to me. This leads to the H-1B stuff. That's a huge problem to me. So it's just like, it was a domino effect. That was the first one to really fall. to really make people
This
start
summer,
looking
right, in
at him
July.
poorly this summer. Everyone saw this, was like, this is a problem. Not just the people that hate him, but also the people that supported him and wanted him to succeed. So I see this as like, here's how I see this going. He's going to let the House vote on it. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't let the Senate vote on it. And then he gets to sign it on his desk and say, hey, I'm here for transparency. This is a huge win. And then people forget about it. And the people forget about it, the people that hate him.
Best case scenario.
That's
Right.
best case scenario. That's how I hope. Because I'm like, let's put this behind us at this point, right? Like, just get it all out there. And then the people that are mad can at least say, well, he did the right thing in the end. And that's what's most important, right? Like, he made a mistake.
I have been fairly consistent in saying that there's about 100 things more I care more about than this, but.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's fine.
That's you, Josh.
Right.
I think we're talking about this more.
Right.
No one said I was normal.
No one said you were normal. Absolutely. Okay. If we're ready now, I say we get on to some more hard text. So we had that USCCB statement, and Erica, I can play some of it. Yeah, I have some of it on YouTube.
Yeah.
But why was this unusual? Like, why did this hit headlines?
Yeah, so this came out from the USCCB meeting in Baltimore last week, where all the bishops get together and talk about various church things. And this was framed as a special statement. And what that means, all that means is that a 2/3 majority of bishops voted in favor of putting out this particular statement. This doesn't happen very often, so it signals that this is sort of a very important issue to the collected together United States bishops. So 2/3 majority, first time in 12 years that they've had any kind of special statement. And it had to do directly with immigration. No names were mentioned, no names were dropped, but it opens up by
with obviousness, though.
I think we could guess.
I mean, right? Like,
so I can listen to a sample, and it's
go
a little
for
bit
it.
long,
Let's do
so
a
we
little
can...
bit of sample of the video that they put out
right now.
Woo!
As pastors, we, the bishops of the United States, are bound to our people by ties of communion and compassion in our Lord Jesus Christ. And we are disturbed when we see among our people a climate of fear and anxiety around questions of profiling and immigration enforcement.
We are saddened by the state of contemporary debate and the vilification of immigrants. We are concerned about the conditions in detention centers and the lack of access to pastoral care.
We lament that some immigrants in the United States have arbitrarily lost their legal status. We are troubled by threats against the sanctity of houses of worship and the special nature of hospitals and schools.
We are grieved when we meet parents who fear being detained when taking their children to school, or when we try to console family members who have already been separated from their loved ones.
Despite obstacles and prejudices, generations of immigrants have made enormous contributions to the well-being of our nation. We as Catholic bishops love our country and pray for its peace and prosperity.
For this very reason, we feel compelled now in this environment to raise our voices in defense of God-given human dignity.
Catholic teaching exhorts nations to recognize the fundamental dignity of all persons, including immigrants. We bishops advocate for a meaningful reform of our nation's immigration laws and procedures.
Okay. First of all, both sides of the political spectrum believe in the dignity of immigrants, except for, I suppose, Democrats who want the immigrants to come into this country and abort their children. That they want to do at taxpayer expense. But for the most part, this idea, do immigrants who come into this country legally or illegally have innate human dignity? Are they made in the image of God, the Creator? And should we treat them with respect? No one debates this.
Right.
This is not, this is what frustrates me. It's like, well, we need to treat them with respect. Like, we do treat someone with respect. If someone breaks into my house, that's a different story. If someone comes into our country illegally, then we might apprehend them. Okay. So but this idea that that's not in dispute. Both parties agree that people who come to this country, whether illegally or legally, are human beings, that they have rights. The question is, do we have borders? Can we enforce those borders?
Do we have laws?
Is it illicit to do so?
Mm-hmm.
And it's this is just, I think this statement really was, I think, very frustrating in that respect. because it's like, yes, of course, immigrants have contributed a lot to our country, but Americans have been very frustrated that we had a situation on our southern border where people were coming into this country illegally for decades, and it was massively exasperated during the 4 horrible years of Joe Biden, who should have been impeached if for no other reason than simply his absolute crazy border policy. That alone was enough to remove him from office. It was absolute dereliction of duty. So to me, why not have the frustration with how the wide open border has created a vacuum where millions of people were being trafficked by coyotes into this country, going through the treacherous Darien Gap and getting into this country to be exploited either through sex or labor. Why is that good? That is horrible. So, I mean, just...
Can I, before I want to get Erica's sense on this. I saw this video, and I know, like, I'm supposed to care because it's the USCCB, I guess. I actually didn't have a huge issue with this. I look at the chat. I think, Josh, you nailed it. It was very tone deaf, and I don't think it really addresses the legitimate frustrations and affronts the human dignity of Americans. No doubt. I think the tone deafness, I think, speaks for itself. But did they say anything in this outside of it being tone deaf that I fundamentally disagree with as a Catholic? Like, no. Like, I do.
I disagree with the fact. I do not think we're seeing a widespread vilification of immigrants. I don't think we're seeing that. I think there's some times where some things are said that are outside the bound. Hey, that's a little too far. But it's not like the vast majority. I mean, why did Catholic voters support Trump and Vance in 2024? There are many reasons. One of which, though, was they wanted law and order and security on the southern border. There's no question about it. Immigration was one of the top 3 issues of this campaign, and it's one of the reasons why Catholics supported Donald Trump. And like, let's look at the numbers. This just came out. I think you had this queued up there. The statistics of the number of people who are crossing through the Darien Gap. Like, this is the Darien Gap in Central America is this treacherous thing. It is a very dangerous thing to go through the Darien Gap. And we saw hundreds of thousands of people make this dangerous journey during Biden's years. I have it on my Twitter page here. We had, if you look at the numbers, in 2022, the number of illegal alien crossings at the Darien Gap was 248,000. That jumped to 520,000 in 2023. In 2024, it got to 300,000. This year, less than 3,000.
It's incredible. Right.
It's a very dangerous thing to kind of go through this Darien Gap. And the people are realizing, wait a minute, there's not going to be a wide open border I can come into. It's not worth the risk. I'm not going to make this very dangerous trek. That's good. That is a success.
It is a good thing.
Let's, Erica, before I get to Tom Homan's response, what do you think?
Yeah, I think same with my biggest frustration with the video, other than totally tone deaf, is that the bishops, once again here, who participated in this, by trying to walk the fine line and be politic or something, and like not naming any names, not naming any specific anything, and just being like, we sense there's more vilification. We have an indiscriminate mass deport. We don't like indiscriminate mass deportation. I mean, like, Tom Homan would agree. We shouldn't have indiscriminate mass deportation. We should have discriminate mass deportation, right? But it just hurts their ability to be moral leaders at a time when the American church and the American order needs strong Catholic voices that actually say something. And for me, I was just contrasting this with the last time they did a special statement where 2/3 of them agreed on something. It was in response to the Affordable Care Act. This is back in 2013. And they put out a strong statement on a specific policy coming out with Obamacare that was forcing people like the Little Sisters of the Poor to pay for contraception. And that's when the bishops can be effective. They were like, this specific law is contrary to religious freedom, was their big thing. And we will not, kowtow to it. We demand it's rescinded. So that is the kind of case where the bishops can do that. But when it comes to these sort of like, we don't like they don't like Trump. So they're gonna come out with this vague thing of like, we have this vilification there. It doesn't point to any specific data. It doesn't point to any specific measure. It's just like Josh said, we all agree. We don't think immigrants or anyone should be treated without human dignity. It just doesn't say anything.
Well, I have to say, this is why we commissioned our own little report that we released here at Catholic Vote.
Yes.
As Tom mentioned, it's immigration enforcement of the Christian conscience, and encourage everyone to go to CatholicVote.org. I think we specifically talk about, yes, in fact, we need to make sure all people, immigrants, whether they're legal or not, deserve dignity. But there's also an important thing that when we come to rule of law and order, and that actually people who immigrate to a country also have an obligation, that the bonds of social order are important, and that the lawmakers of a country have their primary responsibility to their own citizens, and they have to make sure that the laws that they're created. What frustrates me so much is that in modern life we just think America is just too opulent and way too rich, and therefore how can you say no to 1 million people coming into this country? But it's like, well, hold on a second. There are literally 1 billion people who would be willing to come to the United States if you gave them and allowed them to. And it's like, if you suddenly take a country with 330 million people and make it 1.3 billion people, like, you completely transform the entire country, and the economy shatters. So I'm sorry, like, just because people want to come here doesn't. And one of the things that we made in this report, my good friend Benjamin Mann wrote this report. Okay, so let's say somebody's fleeing Venezuela, and it's a difficult situation going on there with the country there, and they're feeling like they're persecuted. Why is it that the just because the United States is that immigrant's first pick, why would they necessarily get their first pick? Why wouldn't it be like, why don't you go to another country, in South America or Central America? Why is it automatically the United States the first one? We take in sheer numbers the most number of people that refugees than any other country in the world. Now, Canada and Germany take a higher percentage, but by raw numbers, we take the most. And at some point, it's like the United States has, over its time, said, hold on a second, we've taken in a lot of immigrants, but we're worried about social cohesion. We're worried about making sure we got an actual melting pot and a sound culture. And so let's kind of tap the brakes here on immigration. And what we're doing right now, there really isn't even a discussion about stopping stop restricting legal immigration. That's barely just being talked about. What's talked about now in this 2024 election was, let's stop illegal immigration. And Democrats,
close the border.
Well, we don't really know if we can, and we don't really want them.
We need to pass a new law. Nope. Turns out we just needed a new president.
Let me just say again, and Tom Homan shot back, and I think, and I can show Homan. It's like it's what everyone thinks, right? It's like whatever American thinks about it. I'll play the clip. It's like a minute long.
They said they get the countries to secure their borders, but they don't like these mass deportations. What's your message?
So according to them, the message we should send to the whole world is that if you cross the border illegally, which is a crime, don't worry about it. If you get ordered removed by a federal judge after due process, don't worry about it, because there shouldn't be mass deportations. Is that the message we send to the whole world? People are still going to put themselves in harm's way to come to the greatest nation on earth. They're going to spend their life savings to give to a criminal cartel. We saw during the Biden administration, when there wasn't no immigration enforcement, over 4,000 aliens died next day during the historic record. 250,000 Americans died of fentanyl, historic record. Secure borders saves lives. I wish the Catholic Church would understand that. We have the right to secure our borders, like they have the right to secure their facility. You can't secure their facility without getting arrested. As a matter of fact, the penalties entering their facilities are much worse than ours. So, that's by doing that, we're saving a lot of lives. Secure borders saves lives.
That's a little bit of a, like some people call it a cheap shot, but it's like you can't do illegal entry into the Vatican City State. That's what he's getting at. But, and so some, super pro immigration church voices like, it's, a cheap shot. But the fact is, why is it that the U.S. bishops aren't really engaging the other questions that Tom Homan's addressing and raising? That there are a lot of people being exploited by these cartels to bring them up through the Darien Gap into the United States. It's very dangerous. There's exploitation going on. It's bad. They burn the life savings. A lot of them get raped. Like, this is bad news. Like, what? Like, by foreclosing that possibility, that's actually better, because thousands of people are not going to be spending a ton of money to cartels that are going to abuse them. Like, that is a win. And then there's the fentanyl that's being smuggled in. There's a lot of this stuff. So why is it that like, you could say, well, we think the Trump policy is a little bit too harsh, but at least acknowledge that there are good policies that are happening.
Yeah.
I don't think that they're necessarily harsh, by the way, but at least just allow that progress has been made.
Yeah, and again, just to emphasize, I want the bishops to be credible. I want them to have a strong moral voice. We need them to have that. But when they pick and choose which crises to, elevate, like, I'm sure there have been mistakes. There have been mistakes when it comes to ICE. There has been, abuse. They've arrested the wrong people. They're not treating people well. Yes, this happens. This is what's happening. But when you only elevate that and you don't acknowledge the full-blown crisis that ordinary Americans, like you said, Josh, have been suffering because of the result of that open border policy and culture. And when you're only attacking the Trump administration and failing to mention, the cartels, and the Chinese government, and the Mexican, government, and the failure for them on their end to close that border. When you're picking and choosing like that, you lose credibility, because people are like, well, what about XYZ?
So some people will say that they're not picking and choosing because they did criticize, for example, Biden. But the thing is, they didn't do a special video about Biden.
No.
And his reckless.
It's been 12 years.
No.
Okay, wait.
They didn't do a video about the fact. They
Yeah.
didn't do a video about the fact that a president who was Catholic supported abortion and
the most anti-Catholic president in the history of the United States.
It's this embarrassing, like, anti-ecumenical moment where people are like, well, why are they so up in arms about this? Which seems like a policy that Trump's doing that maybe it's not perfect, but it's doing some good.
Certainly what people voted for.
Right.
And the Biden policies on abortion and trans were only bad.
I need to say what Kelsey had to say here, because I thought it was so good. And it actually wraps up literally everything we're talking about. And I keep thinking about this because it is easy to get really angry after you see a statement like this. So, direct quote from Kelsey, president of CatholicVote: "A faithful Catholic approach to immigration begins not with politics, but people. Compassion, hospitality, and solidarity with the poor are not optional virtues. They are at the center of the gospel. Yet mercy and justice travel together. One without the other distorts both. Welcoming the stranger and safeguarding one's own citizens are not contradictory, but complementary duties rooted in justice. Properly speaking, there is no such thing as an official Catholic position on the practical details of immigration policy.
Exactly.
Despite what church leaders in America have indicated, a faithful Catholic can support strong and humane immigration law enforcement by means such as physical barriers, detention, and deportation without violating the teaching of the church." And I think you have in here key cameo from our board, St. Thomas Aquinas, summed things up quite well in on Matthew 5:7. That's his commentary on it, when he explained both the need for mercy and justice. "Justice without mercy leads to cruelty," he wrote. "Mercy without justice is the mother of dissolution." And I mean, have we ever felt anything stronger than that? I mean, under the Biden administration, it literally felt like the country was falling apart because, well, one, we didn't really have a functional president, and then two, there was no justice. It was the mercy, I would actually even argue, wasn't actual mercy. It was kind of a weaponized compassion to just, obviously the status quo system was so evil, so easily provable evil. I mean, the amount of times we saw like the back of trucks open up to people just burned alive,
like to death,
literally cooked to death. It's like hard to even Lake and Riley, right? It was like hard to watch that and not feel like a burning rage for, like, that could have been your daughter, that could have been your sister. And I think, Eric, you made the correct point in my mind. You can't, having the conversation, if you want to have the conversation, which I'm open to having the conversation, it has to be comprehensive, especially to the people that you are representing, USCCB. Like, you are the U.S. United States, a part of USCCB needs to be a part of that, the citizens. And obviously there's a huge problem here. And if you're not going to make that a part of that statement, you're not really willing to have, like, a real conversation. I'm all for immigration reform. I don't know who isn't. Like, I think that the system that was allowed to propagate over the last 4 years is a great example of how our current system is too vulnerable to just be flipped on its head. I mean, you have one president who can literally just shut it down immediately. And in the last 4 years, you can allow the country to be flooded. I think back to like the 1900s.
Trump has started some of the reforms, and they're good.
Yes. And they're good, and they should be praised, especially by people like the USCCB.
Well, that was one thing I was reading. The Trump administration has hired and has plans to hire more. It was like a 70% increase in asylum judges, which is precisely what the bishops have been calling for to fix the broken immigration system.
Yeah.
But again, there's no acknowledgement that, oh, the Trump administration is getting this right. So that means, that there's at least some movement here, whereas under Biden, there was no movement. The last thing I want to say here is that I love that line from Kelsey's letter, and it's reiterated in the report at length, that there is no Catholic position on specific immigration and enforcement policy. This isn't like church teaching on mass deportation in, republics and democracies in the 21st century. That just doesn't exist. Good Catholics of goodwill, can disagree on and debate things like specific policies. We have had, since the last, special report from the bishops, we have had multiple instances of the Catholic president of the United States, Joseph Biden, violating what is not negotiable in Catholic teaching. Things that good Catholics never in good conscience disagree with or have debates about. Contraception, the attacks on religious freedom, the abortion being the primary one.
Yeah.
And yet we didn't get a special video on that. And I think that's what hurts the most. It's a little hard to swallow.
Well, and again, what's frustrating about it is that the only real problem on immigration in this, according to, to this video, is that Trump is enforcing it seemingly. Like, in other words, there's no acknowledgement. Yes. Okay. We have had a problem with immigration enforcement. Yes. We've had problems with millions of people coming to this country illegally, but we should still treat them with compassion and care. I'm like, there's nothing. It was just like, it was all convicting. There's no accepting of the horrible situation that this country was facing with a massive problem that was so massive. It was the number one election issue in 2024.
Yeah. Which you think synodally that would have gotten picked up?
Well, the whole synodal thing I'll get back to actually in my
We'll get back to the synodal.
All right.
We have some time.
Oh, yeah, let's slide. Would you like, I can bump you up good news if you want to go synodal.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, we'll see if this happens or not, but the Pillar is reporting that Pope Leo is going to apparently ask Cardinal Roach to grant generous exemptions to Pope Francis's very highly restrictive Traditionis Custodes, which kind of put the Latin Mass practically in chains. So if that happens, that's good news. I mean, this is the whole thing about like why I joke about the synodal, church is like, if you really wanted to be, if a church was really to be listening, then the church would say, yeah, you know what? Pope Benedict was right. We should allow for the celebration in Latin of Latin masses. If you think that there are some voices in the church who are weaponizing the Latin Mass against unity, try to deal with that in a way that doesn't cut off everyone else who wants to experience the Latin Mass. So it's like if 5% of the Latin Mass attenders are being harmful, you're going to let the other 95% never be able, like basically not experience the Latin Mass because of that? Like, how is that a listening church? How is that a fatherly church? So to the extent that Pope Leo might be allowing more liberalization, that would be helpful. I guess, like, why not, if you really thought that was the case, like allow the Latin Mass, but then maybe have you could, as a bishop, say, order a prayer to be said at the end of the Mass that would call for unity, not something that's going to make people spit as they have to read it, but like something that would actually be true. Like, we all want, as Christ said, let them all be one. We want to be a church, united under the, under the Holy Father and with, our eyes on Jesus Christ, something like that. That's a way to do the remedy. But like what we get too often, like there's a letter by the Bishop of Austin that was really, getting rid of kneelers and stuff like that. And you can't be helped but thought that people, I'm not really a traditionalist when it comes to liturgy. I'm more kind of like a conservative or whatever. I'm too lib for most of you traditionalists. That's fine. But I'm not a kumbaya type. Don't get me wrong.
Josh.
Okay. But the thing is, like, I very much am frustrated when people who just love the liturgy that has been celebrated by our mothers and fathers for 13, 14, 15 centuries is now you're looked as if you're a pariah. And I think that is, like a church that has gone out of its way with this whole synodal process to listen to people, and you're going to slam the door in the face of people of the Latin Mass and spit at them like you think they're the worst thing ever. And that was, and that came from the top. That came from Pope Francis, that kind of really just viper attitude. Again, I don't even go to the Latin Mass, but anyone with eyes could see how it was just disgusting. And we should let that move in the past. I understand Pope Leo is wanting to slow his roll on this to try to slowly unwind it. And then, but I just wish he'd go back to what Benedict had done. Like, to me, that Pope Francis, the immediate successor of Pope Benedict, immediately reversed what he did on the Latin Mass, was just such a slap in the face.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll never forget it.
According to the source from the Pillar, said the nuncio explained that while Pope Leo is not minded to change Traditionis Custodes, but as there are many different rites in the church, there's no reason to exclude the TLM. And Pope Leo himself pretty publicly and obviously has an appreciation for Latin. He often prays in Latin. He often sings in Latin. It's very public. So I think
the question is, if some of these bishops, like the one in Charlotte and all these, as they start in Detroit, as they clamp down harder and harder on the Latin
I was literally
Mass,
going to bring that up because
it's like, are you going to try to pull them back a little bit? I mean, like, and again, it strikes me as so weird, like these boomer bishops who have such hatred for the Latin Mass. It's like, dude, if it's not your thing, fine. But why can't you let this little parish over there just do their thing? Like, what's so wrong? I've never understood the vitriol.
Yeah.
Weisenberger actually tweeted a picture of him. I think it was at a Marian Rite church, or it was some different rite.
It was an Eastern Rite church.
Eastern Rite, and everyone was just like, "Are you serious? like, how could you be so down on this rite, but then this rite totally fine?" And isn't that kind of the beauty of the church, is that it is universal and that there are different rites and that there's different modes of appreciation? Well, the Benedict model, I think, is the smartest and the most beautiful. Was like, there's a mutual appreciation of both.
They
the
feed
Novus
each
Order.
other
They feed each other,
mutually,
and they all grow, and like that is the common sense.
And that was starting to
view.
happen. And then Francis said no.
Right.
So
set the church back many years.
Yeah, I think you're right, Joe. I mean, pointing to the generational divide for sure. And just to drop the deep episode there on our young priests, is liberal Catholicism dying? You should totally go check that out, because I talk about that very phenomenon. The generational divide among.
So I appreciate the sacrifices of many Catholic families who love the traditional Latin Mass and now are, feeling like they've been exploited again, and they just want to love the church in this liturgy, and they're having to go to extreme measures just to be able to witness it and celebrate it. And my heart goes out to you. I think it's terrible.
Yeah. Erica.
For sure. Yeah, just some good news. I'm always happy when Planned Parenthood throws up a red flag and says the end is near, because it means that there are fewer babies being killed, at least at certain stages in the womb. So we had Planned Parenthood announcing they have closed 70 centers, clinics / abortion mills this year, according to their own report. And so they said that this is directly tied to the defunding of Planned Parenthood, the loss of funds through Medicaid in particular. So in the past, Planned Parenthood centers have provided 100,000 visits for patients using Medicaid in 1 month, covering an estimated $45 million in care at no cost to patients. You know why it's no cost to patients? Because of donors and you, the taxpayer. But with the cuts to Medicaid, they have had to close 70 abortion mills, 20 since the defunding, following 50 other closures in anticipation of defunding. So big good news there. Of course, the new battlefront in the abortion fight is chemical abortions, because this does not address the fact that men and women continue to get prescriptions for mifepristone, misoprostol sent to them through the mail, which is its own rabbit hole. But this is good news that we have 70 fewer Planned Parenthood centers than we did a year ago. And yeah, let's continue the fight.
Awesome.
I voted for that.
All right, mine's a little, unusual, I think. Everyone takes a collective gasp whenever I'm about to do mine. Mine is Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm going to play this clip, and I'll see if you guys see the same thing I do.
Congresswoman, you posted on X that President Trump is, with his comments, fueling a, quote, hotbed of threats against you. Obviously, any threats to your safety are completely unacceptable. But we have seen these kinds of attacks or criticism from the president at other people. It's not new. And with respect, I haven't heard you speak out about it until it was directed at you.
Dana, I think that's fair criticism. And I would like to say humbly, I'm sorry for taking part in the toxic politics. It's very bad for our country. And it's been something I've thought about a lot, especially since Charlie Kirk was assassinated, is that I'm only responsible for myself and my own words and actions. And I am committed, and I've been working on this a lot lately, to put down the knives in politics. I really just want to see people be kind to one another, and we need to figure out a new path forward that is focused on the American people, because as Americans, no matter what side of the aisle we're on, we have far more in common than we have differences. Yeah. And we need to be able to respect each other with our disagreements.
So just to put a button on this, you regret the things that you have said and posted in the past, the Facebook post that was taken down of you in 2020 holding a gun alongside the squad, encouraging people to go on the offense against the socialists, liking a tweet of somebody calling for the execution of Nancy Pelosi and former President Obama. Just examples.
Well, Dana, as you know, and many people know, I addressed that back in 2021. And of course, I never want to cause any harm or anything bad for anyone. So that was addressed back then, and I very much stand by my words I said then, and I stand by my words today. I think America needs to come together and end all the toxic, dangerous rhetoric and divide. And I'm leading the way with my own example, and I hope that President Trump can do the same.
Okay, I need you to explain to me what this is doing in the good news section, like ASAP. Right now.
Why?
Because that was just
when's the last okay, and this is coming from someone who didn't know much about Marjorie Taylor Greene, other than the fact that she acts crazy on social media and yells a lot and is crazy. When is the last time you've seen that level of self-criticism and reflection from an elected official?
It's rare.
It is very rare if it's real.
Right. I sure hope it is.
I'm not buying this.
You're not buying. I mean, I'm saying we could use a lot more of this. Who came away from this exchange looking good? Marjorie Taylor Greene, in my opinion. That might be controversial. This was a classic gotcha. I'm going to come in with all your worst moments. She left this, I feel like, looking good. Is that crazy to me? I feel like no one else is seeing this. I'm like, I would love more of this. Yes, I was wrong about that. I've changed my opinion. I want to unify. I want to move forward. You guys aren't seeing it. I don't know. This is coming from like one of the craziest members.
Hold on a second. I think it's very good, because I think Marjorie Taylor Greene has a voting record I largely support on many things. I'm not saying I'm going to, but it's her rhetoric that I think has been, kind of crazy. She's kind of like that crazy aunt, talking about Jewish space lasers controlling weather, in California, whatever. Like, not helpful not helpful at all. So the fact
is this what we would want?
So when someone does this, when they take a step back from crazy, we welcome it. I think this is a good thing. My only concern here is I just want to make sure we understand this. It's like the left, it's still good that she did this, but the left is, you have to be very careful, because in the left's mind, the way the narrative is, our country is just getting more and more left wing, more and more progressive, and that's a good thing. And the only problem is that these reactionary conservatives don't like that things are getting better, and that they scream and yell and they go crazy. And so then they're the problem. And whereas I think with regards to American life, we had this country founded under Christian principles, and we've had generation after generation of wealthy elites attack this country and try to undermine it at every turn. And good-natured people have stepped up and try to say, no, don't destroy our country. Don't flush it down the toilet. Don't do all these bad things. And sometimes they use kind of crazy rhetoric like Marjorie Taylor Greene has done. And I'm glad that she's stepping away from that bad rhetoric. But I also want to make sure we understand that there are people who are advocating for horrible things, transgender surgeries on minors, mutilating these children. They favor abortion. They favor all sorts of things that are undermining and attacking the faith, attacking human dignity. We still need to stay strong, and we still need to push back against this. This doesn't mean we don't fight. We still fight. We fight like heck to try to, defend a country and return it back to normalcy. But to the extent that, posting photos on Facebook where makes it look like you want this, to go after the squad and murder them. Yeah, that's good that she apologized in 21.
Yes.
And it's also good that
Like
she's
4
saying,
years ago.
I contributed, in a negative way
Who says
to
this?
political recourse. It's very uncommon. And I think she's doing it right now because she realized that she really upset President Trump, and she realizes that she might be the odd man out, and she's weaponized Trump against him.
Here's the thing. But here's the thing. What if Trump just came out and, fireside chat said, listen, I knew this guy Epstein a long time ago, and I really bungled how this was handled. And I want to be completely honest with you, the American people, that I felt like I've breached your trust. I'm really sorry for how I've handled this. You deserve better. This is how it's going to be released now. There's going to be some tough things in it. I want to just level with you, and I was wrong for how I handled it. Here you go. I would like to earn your trust back. That is the position you want to push.
I always like it
people
when
towards.
politicians level with you.
Right. So with Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think there's plenty of politicians that, we all got crazy during COVID, said crazy things. I think it's a good thing for our politicians and us in general to say, hey, I was a little crazy then. I was a little hopped up. I said things I regret. She actually went on The View, which was hilarious. She was on The View, and she had to face all of the most nasty, vindictive ladies ever. And she actually came out of that looking pretty good. And we're talking about someone that's perceived, quote unquote, as crazy. And I was the first to say up top, she's done some crazy things. But isn't the hope that you change? Isn't the hope that you get better? And again, it can't just be naive hope based on things that they're saying and then their positions don't change. But I was thinking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't have any issues with any of her votes for the most part.
Right.
All of the things that she actually has done. And so the difference would be if you have someone that has voted for crazy stuff and voted for mutilation of children, et cetera, and then we're like, hey, this is a little crazy. Let's tone down the rhetoric. Okay, how have you changed? Prove it. And you're like, I was wrong. I saw the studies. I felt really bad about that. I was wrong about trans. Wouldn't we want those people to come off the ledge too? I would.
So,
and
for
I would love to see them
example,
vote better.
Christopher Murphy is Erica's senator. He is.
I can see his house.
And there are other senators like take, for example, the one out of Rhode Island, Jack Reed. He's about as boring as it gets. Okay. But he votes for radical stuff.
Really radical stuff.
So he should be accosted.
It's worth pointing out here, how you talk, how you communicate, how, your tone, the way you say things, the way you talk about things does matter. But you can have somebody who sounds very quiet, calm, reserved, and then they vote like a total psychopath.
Right.
And that's someone like Jack Reed. Marjorie Taylor Greene did talk like a moon bat at times.
Yep.
Okay. But she would vote in most things that's okay. Yeah, I agree with that. That's we should stop mutilating children. Yes, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. I think this is great news for the discourse. And I actually feel like she is on her media tour that she's done has made a lot of people change their mind about her. And she is positioning herself well by doing seemingly the right thing in public, which is apologize for your past mistakes, don't dig entrenchments, and then try to work towards the American good. I just think that rhetoric not only is just good politically, but isn't it what we should want and what everyone needs right now, especially post Charlie Kirk, especially after all the divisions, especially all this. If more people were just that self-critical, I think people are naturally kind of hesitant to do that. And I think there should be genuine suspicion upon how people are changing their positions. But if it is, that is what we should want for people. So we'll see with Marjorie Taylor Greene, but lines up.
Well, I'll say this. I think Catholic Vote ourselves as an institution, we tend to do that as well. We try to lay the things out. We try to be transparent. We tell people what we think, with regards to for example, how we're talking about the bishops. We respect these guys a lot, but we really don't think that this is prudentially wise because of this and that. And, we explained it. We're not trying to throw grenades.
Yeah, I'm not too proud to admit, we're when we're wrong, when we got a little crazy. Like, I think that's good. Hopefully, I hope that I would have that much virtue to do that. Okay, let's get in church corner before we hit Twilight Zone. Erica, I was a little confused. I saw a Gallup poll, largest decline in adult religiosity, I think, ever recorded. Juxtaposed with the New York City conversions, especially among Gen Z. So how should we read all of these studies coming out about religiosity and Catholicism?
Yeah, this is a good question. And this came up in conversation with a couple of friend groups that I'm in the last couple of weeks. Because on the one hand, we have all this vibe of like Gen Z getting back to church, more Catholic conversions. And we've covered that on the Deep. We've covered that here a lot. But then we get a poll like this. And actually the Loop this morning was a perfect sort of snapshot of this seeming disparity that's going on here. So we have this Gallup poll that says we've had the largest decline. And I'll just go through this one first. But we have the largest decline in adult religiosity. I'm losing it here. The Gallup poll reveals that the share of U.S. adults who say religion is an important part of their daily life dropped from 66% in 2015 to just 49% in 2025. Now that's a 17-point plunge. And this kind of a shift is really almost unheard of. Only 14 out of 160 countries included in the study have dropped or risen more than 15 points in that 10-year time frame. So a 17-point shift is very dramatic, one of the greatest globally. And it places the U.S. closer to secularized countries like France and the United Kingdom than to the rest of the world. So the rest of the world, if you go global, about 86% of people around the world say religion is an important part of daily life. Now the United States is farther from that number and closer to sort of the extreme secularism of Western Europe. So I wanted to compare this with the numbers from my favorite religion numbers guy, Ryan Berg. And his data is much more long-term. So this was a 10-year study. And I like him because he gives us like a half century to century kinds of numbers to understand the bigger context for this.
Ryan Burge.
Ryan Burge. Sorry. I always say Berg and it's Burge, the E at the end.
Well, I mean, it's like just, you said it so
soft.
Quiet too. It's like, we're not talking about Brian Birch. We're talking about Ryan.
Who's feeling good with the Bears on top of the division, but all right, continue.
Yeah, he texted me right after the game.
Oh, yeah, I figured. Yeah, freaking Brian.
Right. So he gives good, going to America alone, he gives us a good context here. So he looks at religious affiliation over the last 40 to 60 years. And we talked a lot in the early 2010s about the rise of the nones, so people who are not affiliated with any religion. And while that continued to rise through the 2010s, now it seems to be plateauing, right? So we have the Gallup numbers, we have plunging religiosity. Ryan Burge, we have a sort of plateauing, perhaps, a slowing down of the decline when it comes to affiliation and saying, I don't belong to any religion. So we have two not so great trends. But then we get these smaller scale stories like the Brooklyn Diocese. And this was the other piece that was profiled in the Loop this morning. So in the Brooklyn Diocese, adult entries into the Catholic Church roughly doubled from 2024 compared with 2023. So again, you start to like put these percentages in your head. Okay, wait a minute. So U.S. adults are 17% less religious in daily life, but then we have this diocese that's like 50% growing, doubling. So for example, they had 538 adults entered the church in 2024, nearly twice the 2023 number. Then we also have these stories from the Pillar that we covered back in May. They reported a surge in the numbers of aspiring Catholics registering to join the church last Easter of 2025. Lansing, Michigan, for example, reported a 30% spike from the previous year, 633 converts, which is the highest they've ever seen. So we get these.
I don't like that. I mean, it's an anomaly. Yeah. Hillsdale College, they're getting a ton of converts.
It's because of St. Anthony's.
I mean, that's a good thing. I mean,
that's a great thing. Why are you talking that down, dude? That's sick.
Yeah.
It is awesome.
Shout out Hillsdale.
Yeah. So I think like what we're looking at here, just to help people understand, are these in contradiction to each other? But we have these macro studies which seem to indicate increasing secularism in our country. But we have these kind of tinier micro success stories in individual dioceses. So on one level, we're talking millions of Americans. On another level, we're talking these pockets of hundreds, maybe moving in a different direction. So that's the way you want to think about the stories. And for me, it makes sense. I mean, just historically looking back at the last 2 millennia of the church, Christianity, Catholicism doesn't do so well when it's flourishing and it's the majority and like everything's comfortable and you're all doing great. We tend to get fat and happy and complacent, which I think is what the phenomena that we see with sort of the 1960s and the boomer, like the seminaries are full, we're building all these churches and all these schools, and then crash, right? But when things are tough, when there's less of a secular narrative of success, when there's less cushion in what the state can offer and what our culture can offer, and right now it's not a lot, right? Then you start to have these smaller pockets of conversions because that's where the church is offering meaning, purpose, and a real culture in life. And people respond to that in small scale, not necessarily always in great revivals, although it can happen. Read Acts 7.
So what Ryan Burge was saying is that these stories that you see, let's say Washington Post or New York Post or Fox News of these Gen Z youth embracing the traditional religions, and he's like, and he was kind of throwing some cold water on it. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, you're talking about major headwinds. So, we're having lots of Catholics who haven't gone to church in a long time that are dying off, right? So we're losing members that way, but did they go to church much?
Yeah, affiliation's not always the best.
And they had kids that were Catholic, and some of them hardly ever went either. So we're getting like a couple of generations of people who aren't going to church on a regular basis. So my grandmother and grandfather went to church almost every day, certainly every week, and they had 11 children, and I don't even know how many of those 10 children were in at Mass on Sunday, and then they had those of their 30 plus grandchildren. I might have been one of the only ones that went to Mass on Sunday. So, in terms of raw numbers, you're dealing with a situation where a lot of people are, would answer on a survey. If you ask all my aunts and uncles, they'd say Catholic, but they go to church on, maybe. I'm not trying to talk crap about my family. I love my family. Okay. But I'm just saying, I can see
it's a snapshot of America.
It's an illustrative story.
I can see these numbers, and bring them to life. And so to me, when some kid who grew up in a secular home watches a Charlie Kirk video and says, you know what, I'm giving myself over to Christ, and he starts going to church, whether it's evangelical or Catholic, I'm like, massive success, because that, where someone was lost, now they have been found, as opposed to a lot of the Catholics that are leaving the church, they haven't gone in decades, or they've died off, or, whatever. So it's like, to me, these stories are encouraging because we're getting more people who are on fire with the faith, and they're going to inspire other people to join. I think it's a good sign.
From the trenches. I think Pope Benedict's prediction is coming true. We're a smaller and more fervent church, no question, especially from the Catholic perspective. I'm curious where this goes, because as Erica pointed out, we don't really live in a Christian society or nation anymore. We like to proclaim our roots, to talk about it. I think it's true. I think at one point we really were a Christian society for actually probably a majority of our country's history. That's just not the case anymore. And I think it makes the smaller enclaves of more fervent Catholics, puts them in an interesting position, because they are smaller, they're more fervent, they operate in a less friendly to Christianity country than they may have before. And so you're making the point correctly that Christianity does operate better under persecution. It's always flourished during times of serious persecution, like death type persecution. Right. There is a small element of persecution now, obviously not to that level, but in just the friction we have now in the country that we operate in. So I'm curious where this goes. You know what I mean? Because I see I think as Josh is saying, there's kind of a soft evangelization effort and opportunity, because as you get more rootless people, that they're more open to the message of Christianity because they have not been fulfilled by the promises that were made before, and there isn't that kind of Christian space anymore that they feel is dominant, is kind of the status quo. So I'm excited for the opportunity as well. I'm just curious where like we're going to get more of that friction between the people that are really
why, though?
hardcore and the people that are like not Christian at all.
I think the reason why is because for whether it's true or not, whether it's fair or not, for baby boomers, Gen Xers, older millennials, Christianity is not a new thing. It's something that they had left. Whereas Gen Z is like looking at all around the whole world, the digital addictions and loneliness and atomization of society, and Christianity seems like, wait a minute, this is refreshing. This is a new alternative. And I think that's exciting.
Yeah. Amen. Let's rock Twilight Zone now. Josh, what do you got?
So about a year and a half ago or so, Clarence Thomas actually signaled that there might be an opportunity to make a run at rent control laws, but the particular case then that was approaching the bench wasn't the right one. And so this guy out of New York, Rob Johnson, he's a lawyer, he thinks he found a case that really could provide the opportunity for the Supreme Court to take a look at this. And the reason why isn't so often the case, if you're talking about rent control, it's like, the left would use it like, oh, you're going to go after this poor person who's just, trying to make ends meet and they're broke. And if you let the horrible owners of landlords raise the rent. And so it's just terrible. It's a terrible situation, from optics, makes it seem like, you're just throwing this cool person
you
out
hate
on
grandma.
the streets. Well, lo and behold, this lawyer found these guys who own an apartment. And the situation here is the apartment itself is so rent controlled that it's actually not feasible because the legal limit they can rent this apartment out is $700. It's a 2-bedroom apartment in Manhattan, and they cannot rent it for more than $700. Manhattan. I mean, you can't get a 2-bedroom apartment in Petoskey for $700 a month, but in Manhattan. And so it's priced so low. And of course, if they rent it out, then they actually will lose money because, of course, they have to update all the stuff to the apartment because it's not safe.
And meet the extensive code from places like New York City.
And pay the taxes, right?
So what this is the perfect case then, because they could say by having this restrictive rent control and only allowing you to sell it at or rent it out at $700, it amounts to a government taking because now he cannot economically. He's losing money by not renting it out every day that he doesn't rent it out, of course. And if he rents it out, he also loses money because he would have to pour so much money into it just to get it up to code to sell it at below market rates because the market is so distorted. So what happens here is that people get into a rent control apartment, and they stay there forever because the control is so low and you can't raise it so much while they're there, only when they can switch. Anyway, I think this it's kind of like a Twilight Zone, but like the care that is being taken to find out about this, this is one of those things that who wants to argue on behalf of owners or landlords? Like landlords are not universally evil people,
right?
Like I'm sorry, sometimes in life they're the good guys. Actually, thank you.
There was a story this morning. It was either Free Press or Morning Brew, but there are 50,000 vacant apartments in New York, in Manhattan.
Yeah,
specifically 50,000.
Do you know that the average price of rent is, I think, $4,400 for a 1-bedroom apartment in New York City?
Probably studio. Yeah, it's just so messed up.
But
something like this would be necessary.
Can I push at you really quickly? I actually agree. I think that many landlords are being demonized unfairly because they're put in like a situation like this. But I also do see the problem of people that grew up in New York City that can no longer afford to live there. The real problem, as you're saying, is these vacant apartments. Many of them are actually rented out by the wealthiest people from all over the world, and they don't live there. They buy it as a store of value or a way to launder their money or whatever. And so they own a lot of New York City by, apartment building. The real problem is that much foreign investment from the wealthiest people all over the world is driving up prices for everyone. I don't think the answer to that problem is rent control. I don't know what the answer to that problem is. Like New York City is essentially, and Mexico City is seeing it too in terms of their gentrification. Like people from all over the world go and they buy up places.
Cities,
Exactly. And then they will force out
It's
people
an
that
international
cannot make
city.
enough
It's not
money
an
to live
American
there anymore.
city.
I don't know
I
what the
don't
answer
know
is,
necessarily about how to answer that from a policy perspective, but the one thing I will say is that if you put such tight controls that you can't actually feasibly make any money, in fact, you lose money if you don't rent it, and you lose money if you do. Either way, it's a lose-lose situation. If you do that, for enough of these business owners are like, this is terrible. Like I can't get ahead, and and so what you've done is people who want to try to make a living by providing housing to people are snuffed out of the market. So I want businessmen to make money by providing more apartments in New York City to meet the demand, but they're not going to build more apartments if this is the kind of rent control stuff that happens to them. So then the supply doesn't go up. This is the problem. I always talk about this, like there's certain industries that people demonize. So gas companies are the ultimate. I always hear people about, especially the Democrats, but just in everyday life, gas company, there they go, raising the prices again. So whenever the price goes down, which it did recently in my state by about 30 cents ago, gosh, why aren't these gas companies greedy anymore? Like they could have charged $3.30, but they're only charging $3 now. I can't believe that they're not as greedy as they were a month ago. And maybe it's because you don't get to set the price yourself. The price of something is determined by.
I thought it was because they took Joe Biden to heart. They were like, he was right all along. We shouldn't be so greedy.
So again, this is one of those things where it's like landlords are obviously just super universally despised and hated, especially in certain cities like New York City. But the fact of the matter is the rent controls have gone too much and too strident and too strict. If a guy like that, oh, I'm sorry, you can only rent it out for 2-bedroom apartment for $700, like that's just ridiculous.
Agree. Erica, what do you got?
Well, we have the ultimate mansplain, and I can't wait to tell you about Democrat Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey. Lives just north of me here in Connecticut. So she's up in Massachusetts. She's drawing fire because she recently appointed a new vice chair of the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women's Programming and Planning Committee. Who did she appoint? She appointed Giselle Bird, not the person's given name, because Giselle is actually a biological male, transgender activist. The appointment was effective November 1st. Bird, the executive director of the Theater Offensive in Boston. I mean, that sounds like something Josh would totally belong to, the Theater Offensive.
I'm just looking at that big thing covering the neck so you don't see his head on there.
What is that? So the head of several LGBT nonprofits was initially appointed back in August. So once again, we learn that men make the best women.
Yep.
And why wouldn't we put a male in charge of the committee that's in charge of women's programming and planning? Maura Healey, thank you. Thank you.
Listen, we give Trump a hard time. We gave him a hard time recently. I remember a time when I saw a headline at the national level like this every day.
Yep.
Every day.
Oh, remember Trans Day of Visibility on the front lawn?
Oh my gosh, man. Glad that our fights have moved on from that. I mean, I was just so sick of
100%
luggage thieves and.
Unless you live up here in the Northeast, we have not moved on. We have not moved on here. We're still there.
That's alive and well.
It's still 2023.
That is alive and well.
Northeast.
Well, I mean, there are two things that Trump has done very well, like the secure the border, and number two, it seems like the contagion of trans has started to broke the fever, and we're starting to see it in decline.
I hope so.
A lot less teenagers are identifying it as such. This, if he had not won, it would not have been the case. We might have been locked in for this for decades. So
I mean, I keep saying we have our frustrations with the Trump administration, but when I think back to just over a year ago, the alternative was absolutely unthinkable. Precisely because, and Massachusetts is a good daily reminder to me of just why I voted for Donald Trump, because it's still happening. All right, this is the story everyone's, but the chat has been clamoring for this story, Tom.
Clamoring.
Dan is waiting.
Listen, I've made my thoughts abundantly clear on the H-1B visa program. It's a complete scam. It's a betrayal to Americans, and it's hurting people, young people, especially trying to get in entry-level jobs, as AI is already causing problems on that front. That being said, okay, so we get this statement from the Ford CEO. Someone actually emailed it in, and I was trying my best to dig into it. So Ford CEO, he went on the podcast circuit, said he has 5,000 open mechanic jobs with six-figure salaries from the shortage of manually skilled workers. Quote, we are trouble in our country. Specifically, I believe he said $120,000 a year type roles for mechanics, 5,000 open. We are in trouble in this country. We are not talking about this enough. Farley told host Monica Langley, we have over 1 million openings in critical jobs, emergency services, trucking, factory workers, plumbers, electricians, and tradesmen. It is a very serious thing. This was not received well online, but I will say before I get into this, I really gave him the benefit of the doubt, and I do actually think it's more complex than it leads to. Ford, of course, close to my heart.
That's why we
from the
love you,
Detroit
Tom.
area. Thank you. So I went to try to investigate this claim in its fullness. Now, I did investigate this claim, and I don't think you couldn't find those roles on the website. They were saying that these roles exist at the dealership level, so it's hard to aggregate all the different dealerships. The problem is each dealership sets their own salaries and rates, and a lot of times they're hourly. The best I could ascertain is that most likely the average for this is like somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000 for these straight up mechanic tech jobs. The $120,000 roles on the Ford website are for highly specialized engineers, which of course that makes more sense. The 50 to 60 makes a lot more sense. So I think I will just say as a non-starter, I think it's unhelpful for him to go, of course, the CEO of Ford doing pretty well money-wise, to go on and like make this bold claim that there's these $120,000 because they just don't exist right now. So if you're going to speak, be accurate. I do think that there's a problem here for sure. I don't know anyone that would disagree, but that just was really unhelpful and it set a lot of people off. And then of course, Elon Musk has chimed in at this point and further cemented the claim. America has a major shortage of people who can do challenging physical work or even wish to train to do so. Also not very helpful as someone that utilizes the H-1B program quite a bit. That being said, I don't disagree that there is a skills mismatch, which of course brings me back to the man, the myth, the legend, Henry Ford himself, and how he wanted to address this skill problem, in which I think there's a huge opportunity. Because cynical me, I'm like, Ford CEO is just going to make this claim to preemptively move more factories to Mexico or move more factories elsewhere, as Ford has done. Like we're in the era of the transnational corporation, and I will argue that's why quality has severely declined for American vehicles. They become much more complicated and electric. A lot of these techs are going to be working on electric cars. And so it's much harder to fix the cars, which I think cynically was done intentionally so that you can bring the revenue back to these specialized areas. That being said, they do have a program called New Ford Tech, in which you can enroll at the high school level and receive some certification. So it's not that they're doing nothing. They have scholarship programs for people to go and learn the specialized area of labor. But I will say historically, and someone did put together this graphic, which I think is true, the nobody wants to work anymore claim. If I could be the first to dismiss, they have newspaper clippings from 1894 to 2022. And I encourage you all to go back through the progression of American labor, because the problem with American labor is we did receive a lot of immigrants. And a lot of people would say, well, the Italians, all these other people, we put them to work and they did a lot of great things for the country. I don't disagree. In many cases, it completely evaporated and destroyed the wages for Americans working before. And as a business tactic, it makes sense to replace Americans with people that will work for less under worse conditions, often child labor, et cetera. So I have all these clips. It says, it's becoming apparent that nobody wants to work in these hard times, 1894 and then 2022. According to a new survey released by Tiny Pulse, 1 in, however, executive leaders agree with the statement, no one wants to work anymore. So I would just encourage, say, like CEOs at this point. I know it's hard. I read a couple Free Press articles about the situation on the ground for these techs, and they're even administering, like, we've kind of gotten ourselves in a problem by making things so complicated, so technical, and then not paying techs enough. They work them too hard. There's a lot of turnover for this area when people can go to college and receive a degree that would transfer from place to place and be more valuable in the long term. And we've told our youth, hey, go into tech, go into healthcare, because that's where the opportunities are, and then you can transfer it around. And so automotive industry has really gotten themselves in a corner because they've made things so complicated, they've made things so certified, and they're currently not offering, at least at scale, enough vocational training or technical challenging, or they're not paying people enough to make this enticing. So there's a huge opportunity here for someone that wants to tap into American labor. The caveat is you need to pay them. Like you need to pay people enough money to want to do your work. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. People are going to do it. And I think we're kind of at an impasse where there's people that do want well-paying, good-paying jobs that have future careers and trajectory. And I don't think you should fault anyone for wanting that. But then at the business level too, there is a challenge. We need to find good labor that's committed to the company, that can work hard, that's going to be reliable, that'll show up. I think there has to be a little bit of a bargain here between companies that want to invest in their future workforce, understanding the position that the future or the younger generation is in right now. Mm-hmm. They're saddled with so much college debt that they need they need a guarantee path to help pay it off. And maybe that's a government collaborative effort where say, hey, we're going to start forgiving loans to go into these specific areas of work. Like I could see that as a potential solution. Well, there needs to be some type of collaboration at this point. I think Ford and other companies, the first one to move on this at scale is going to reap the rewards of, good labor. So I don't know.
So, I mean, I mentioned before, I'm actually a fan of the fact that my state of Michigan has free community colleges for 2 years or whatever, but included in that, it's a lot of skilled trade stuff too. So you can learn how to be an HVAC specialist. There's, I remember there's like a dozen of these different things that were included in that as well. I don't have them off the top of my head, but so states are starting to realize, it's in our interest to try to provide these opportunities and let kids know. I mean, kids, they're 18. Let them know that they have this other pathway and to take a look at it because it can be very rewarding and you don't get saddled with, basically a mortgage for debt. You can jump right into a job with a little bit of training, and it's a good path.
Yeah.
Good pay.
Yeah, I was looking through the new Ford Tech program there, and I hope that it does take off a little bit more. And they are offering it to high school students, right? So military veterans, high school students, and we said on the program, like, not everyone needs to go to college, especially colleges and universities the way that they are right now in our country. Sounds like Rerum Novarum, Marga. I love that. Yeah. And so I hope that more and more high schools in the United States start to include these programs increasingly, and not just the poorer high schools that are in the cities either, but like my own Cheshire High School down the road here. Like there is no reason why every wealthy white kid in Cheshire needs to then go to some white collar university and study for 4 years and get $280,000 in debt and all that. Like, kids from any they could benefit from these programs. They don't have to go to school. So I hope that they continue to go into the high schools more and more and make kids aware of these opportunities.
Yeah,
something's broken.
Got rid of VOTEC.
They never should have gotten rid of VOTEC.
Never
places like GMI, now General Motors Institute, and Kettering University, as it's now known, were initiatives by these companies. I do think we're kind of in you can't put the toothpaste back in the bottle with globalization, because what's frustrating to me is simultaneously we're told American universities are so bad that 600,000 Chinese students are willing to travel across the world to go there. So that's kind of hilarious. And if we don't do that, we're going to half of universities will close, even though we're also being told the universities aren't giving people the training to actually equip them to jobs and careers that actually pay them. But then Ford is saying, hey, we have this shortage. Just move to Mexico then. What's keeping you here? You know what I mean? Like, clearly something's keeping you here. It's either the regulatory environment or you benefit off of all of the things that America provides you as a company, but you're saying, well, I don't want the workers. That can't be the end trade. Like, you need to actually, if you're going to be here, if you want to benefit from the regulatory environment, stock exchange, whatever, you need to invest in Americans. And that needs to be, I don't know if that just needs to be clearer told by the Trump administration to these companies. There needs to be an impasse on student loans. I'm not sure.
We don't necessarily know what is the right proper balance as of yet of the percentage of people that need to go for a liberal arts degree for 4 years and how many people should go into the trades. We're not trying to force that situation, but it is true that we had a one-track mind on this for about 40 years and that we're trying to shove everyone into the 4-year liberal arts degree. And we were doing it so with massive government subsidies and loans and made it so that anyone could get it. you know, like if an 18-year-old tried to borrow $5,000 to start a cleaning business, it'd be easier to go to a proctology exam, but then you want $80,000 to go to a 4-year school, like sign here.
Here you go.
It didn't make any sense. So again, we needed to get rid of some of these artificial distortions that the market was doing. Well, that was done to the market by government.
Here's a crazy idea, Josh. What if, because I think student loans, federal student loans, they have servicers, but that money does end up getting paid back to the government, right? Like that would just go, I don't know if that goes to the Treasury or something. Right. So what if the government was like, hey, we screwed up, we gave too much, let's forgive.
They pulled a Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Exactly. We screwed up, our fault. Let's forgive 75% of student loans with certain stipulations or whatever. But we are no longer going to be involved in the college business. So, or dramatically reduce. We're not going to give out these loans.
They've already made a major step here, Tom. Like the big, beautiful bill allowed for the Department of Education to make modifications. And so what is starting next July 1st, the total amount a family can borrow is like $20,000 a year, period. And so that you basically place some sort of caps on this. It's like, you just can't borrow 80 grand or something like that every year, so there are some, and people are freaking out like, it's like, well, like you have to have, some limits here, some
and you have to start somewhere. Right.
Yeah. So I don't, I think there's so many cool programs I would actually love. So I did actually get to hang out with the plumber. That is coming, by the way. We're in the process of editing. And like, I got to ride along with them. And the two guys I was with, the farmer and the plumber, my coolest takeaway was, man, these are young guys like getting after it, like positive. They forewent other rewards or temporary rewards. They sacrificed a lot and they're reaping the rewards of it now. It's not an easy life, but they work hard and they're good men. And I see so many examples, small examples, say like the Wisconsin Harley Davidson apprenticeship program or this Ford Tech program, or there's all these opportunities. I think that we're getting close to the breaking point of college becoming viable, and AI is going to totally accelerate this. In some ways, I think it's good, but I think it's scary to the point where it could be detrimental to human flourish. It already kind of is, but to the point where like, if you can't provide for your family, if you can't afford living anymore because you're in such a crushing situation, I just think like, again, maybe it'd be a good like Trump moment. Hey, I'm wrong on H-1B. Like, I was wrong on that. I didn't understand it. I shouldn't have said it. We're shutting the program down. I want the future of America to include men and women that can make a good wage, not be saddled in a ton of debt, and be able to afford the American dream. And I'm willing to be creative to do that. And I'm willing to have corporate partnerships to help do that. I think if that was the message, instead of I'm having private dinners with AI billionaires that we're going to bail out, clearly, I just see it hurtling down the same path that we hurtled down during the 2008 financial crisis and the Ford Motor bailout and all these kind of things. Like, you're just helping out the richest, and the people are getting screwed again. That is like, that's actually not only would be a good thing, that's what you should do as the current like patriarch of America. Your role, we put you in office to take care of Americans, and there's no one else who's advocating on our behalf. Clearly, if you did that, seriously, you'd reap the rewards of goodwill forever. Like, you'd be cemented forever. So I hope this is a good day to exercise our demons, right? Like, we're just getting the Epstein stuff out there, exercised, right? Like, we're gonna start.
Hey, we want
people jobs again.
The best ideas, the best team forward. That's what it's about.
Do it.
So I thought it was a good way to end.
Yeah.
Great show, gang. We have another Wednesday show coming for you. I'm excited for the next episode of The Deep. I'm already looking forward to it.
Oh boy, it's gonna be a good one. Yep.
This afternoon,
we have some climate change talk going on here.
Yes.
The polar bears are back, baby. I have numbers. I have receipts.
So yeah, but if you want to check out all of that, head over to YouTube. That's the Loopcast over on YouTube. That's where we got all extra content. But leave a review. Apple Podcasts and Spotify help us out a ton. Subscribe to The Loop, CatholicVote.org/getloop. And thank you to our champions who make this possible. CatholicVote.org/champions, where you can join them. Really only possible with you guys. Thank you. And if anyone is like a Ford employee or something, like, talk to me. I actually really want to get to the bottom of this. I want to solve it. I'd like to hear from you. So we're going to end right now. Daily prayer. This is actually from Tinfoil Tom. Sent it over from DC. This is the feast day of St. Elizabeth of Hungary. She was a 13th century queen known for her charity to the poor and sick. princess who became, we're not
Confirmed
getting into the prayer yet.
monarchist, I'm going to say.
So is mine a little
We don't
older.
have enough time to get into that, Erica. Okay, so we're going to end in that prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. O God, by whose grace your servant, Elizabeth of Hungary, recognized and honored Jesus in the poor of this world, grant that we, following her example, may, with love and gladness, serve those in any need or trouble, in the name and for the sake of and through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. St. Thomas More, St. Fidelis, Our Lady of Guadalupe, pray for us. Great show, guys. We will catch you on Wednesday, ready to rock, and I hope you have a great Monday.